Alright, House of the Dragon. It's coming. We still haven't gotten the trailer yet. But in this video, I'm going to jump right into it. Let's go back and look at some of the leaked images that came out while they were still filming. They filmed for almost a year. But before I get started, please do me a massive favor and slap a like in this video. The like goal's going to be 420. Alright, so in this first image, we have Rhaenyra and Daemon, right? And this is going to be in the main timeline that will take place for the majority of the story post-season 2, right? So we don't exactly know the breakdown of it, but we imagine, or at least I imagine, the first 4 or maybe 3 episodes will be heavily involved in the earlier timeline. Like the flashbacks where we have the younger version of Rhaenyra and the younger version of Alicent. Daemon appears to be, the actor Matt Smith appears to be playing himself. He'll just have a different wig, his hair will be longer, and it looks as though we've only seen really one version of Viserys, so it seems as though he'll be that as well. For those of you unaware, King Viserys is Rhaenyra's father, Daemon's brother, and Queen Alicent's husband. Now, it's interesting to note, because technically, in the Fire and Blood Part 1 story that we get, Daemon is regarded as the king's heir by the small folk. Like King Viserys never says, Daemon, you are my heir, right? He says, Rhaenyra, you are my heir. But everybody kind of just assumes Daemon's next in line for the Iron Throne. He's got Dark Sister. He's everything that his brother isn't. He may have the Targaryen dick type attitude, but he's very kingly. You know what I mean? He's kind of power hungry because he knows in his mind, he's a better man than Viserys. He kind of feels like he's been, pushed back his whole life. So he's kind of power hungry, which leads me into, something that's going to come up in some of these other images. But Daemon is going to be a fan favorite for sure. Rhaenyra, her pose is very regal, right? So I'm not a big dress guy, but this dress looks amazing, right? So in Feast for Crows, right before Cersei is going to go see the High Sparrow, she puts on a dress and she chooses something that's very solemn, right? She wants to appear to be weak and meager in front of the High Sparrow, so it's good to dress down. She wears basically a woolen tunic or a woolen dress, right? There's no lines revealing her titties or her shoulders or her legs or anything like that, but she does have gold trim to, quote, decrease the severity of the lines, right? That's one thing that they are carrying into the show. Every single person's outfit or whatever you want to call it looks amazing. Rhaenyra is very much playing the part of Team Blacks, right? The princess party, right? Daemon is the rogue prince, so of course he mostly wears black, but Rhaenyra is wearing the traditional house colors. It's like this red is infused with black. But look, I've talked enough about dresses. Let's move on to this next image, which is a flashback. This is just exactly what I was just talking about. That is Millie Alcock, and she is playing the younger version of Rhaenyra, and right there we have the younger version of Corlarion. I can't exactly remember the actor's name, but you all let me know down below in the comment section. His name may not be necessarily, well, no, I guess it actually has been leaked or released to the public. I just can't remember it right now, but like I said, let me know down below. So this is when Rhaenyra marries Corlys Velaryon's son, Laenor, right? So basically, Laenor was skipped over, technically twice, but more so once, right? So his mother, Rhaenys, the queen who never was, and his father, Corlys Velaryon, at a time of succession, right? Rhaenys was technically supposed to be next in line for the Iron Throne because her father was, then he died. His daughter, Rhaenys, was skipped over and instead was chosen for Viserys. It was mentioned that she could rule for the son that was in her belly, but that son ended up turning up, I'm of course referring to Laenor's mother, Rhaenys, that son ended up being a daughter, Laena. She marries Daemon, and they have twin daughters. But for right now, during this time period, or just relating back to what I was saying, he was technically skipped over twice because Rhaenys got skipped over when she was pregnant with Laenor, even though she thought it was a boy. And then in the Great Council, Laenor skipped over again because Viserys is said to be older and technically more fit to be a king. Like, Viserys had ridden Balerion the Black Dread. Even though Balerion died and Viserys never took another dragon, there were several things that were leading people to elect Viserys. So technically, Laenor was skipped over twice. But continuing on here. Next up, this is kind of a gruesome image, is the War of the Stepstones, right? So basically, what happens, remember I was mentioning earlier how Daemon's power hungry. It's like perfect, it's a perfect setup for this to happen because there's this area known as the Stepstones in the Narrow Sea, right? So if you want to get into Westeros, you have to pass through this chain of islands. There's something known as a triarchy, and they're formed by 3 cities that basically go and clear out all of the pirates and people that are stealing shit for any ships that cross through that area of the Stepstones. And for a while, everybody's okay with it, right? So Westeros, the 7 Kingdoms didn't want to have to worry about losing all of their ships every time they brought back goods from the east. So the triarchy, protecting that area really worked for them for a while. But then eventually Corlys Velaryon and his ships got taxed super heavily. So he's like really annoyed at this point. Daemon, who's looking for power, teams up with Corlys and they go down to the Stepstones. And this is actually like in line with the next image, which is Kragus Crabfeeder, this dude who's got this disgusting red thing all over him, and he's wearing a mask that looks similar to the Harpy's mask. But I think they've kind of... This could just be a dude that works for him, but the fact that Kragus was known as someone who literally hammered his enemies out on the shore and the crabs would come and devour them, this dude is probably just more villainized for the show, so they made him have, looks like a minor grayscale affliction maybe, but he's definitely hammering individuals who tried to pass through the Stepstones out to these posts on the shore, and they're being eaten by crabs. Now, what's interesting is that in, I think it is 108 AC, Daemon slays this dude with Dark Sister in single combat. So he's like, look, he wars with him for like 2 years or something. He's like, look, I'm done with this, right? So he goes to this dude and he's like, let's do this. Let's have a freaking 1v1 me, bro. And Daemon kills him with Dark Sister. That's probably going to be shown on the TV show. That's the last we'll hear from them for a while until the war really kicks up. So maybe like season 2 or season 3, we'll come back to some of these characters that we visited with in the first season and find out that they actually hate Daemon and will team up with the Greens to try to take out the Blacks. The next image we have is of Graham McTavish, a.k.a. Harold Westerling. He is the Lord Commander of the Kingsguard right before Criston Cole takes over, and I believe he dies in 112 AC. Now, what's interesting is that it's not necessarily mentioned, the events around that. It's just mentioned that Criston Cole is the new Lord Commander, and this is something I think the show is going to sort of kind of mix and match a little bit. Like, this image itself is from when he's escorting Rhaenyra and Alicent around the 7 Kingdoms, or maybe they were out hawking or hunting or something, and this wagon behind him is a wagon full of choice meats for Rhaenyra's dragon, Syrax. Now, I was actually sent some information through the DMs over on Twitter. Speaking of which, if you have a Twitter account, please go follow me at Sarah_Hunts. But the person mentioned, and I always keep their name secret, just because, that's the smart thing to do. But this person mentioned that during this scene is actually, it's interesting because Rhaenyra is very much intimidating Alicent. And even though we have images of them smiling and sort of like hanging out with each other kind of thing, this is right around the time when their relationship starts to sour. Rhaenyra lands her dragon near Alicent's wagon, and it causes like a disturbance, and Rhaenyra is sort of hanging out with the small people and touching them and letting her dragon feast. And Alicent comes out and sees this, and that's what kind of starts the struggle between them. Like, obviously it's a bit different in the books, but you have to visually show stuff on the TV show because we're not given POV accounts in this story. It's a history account, right? It's written from the account of Mushroom, who was alive and experienced a lot of the events of that happen during the Dance of the Dragon, but for the most part, it's all like hearsay. So you kind of have to combine all the different, not points of views, but all the different sides of the story into one, right? So for this being a TV show, George can write a line and say, yes, the queen and the princess hated each other because technically the queen's children with the king were sons, and sons come before the daughter in every single case of law in Westeros, and she's being usurped, so to speak, because her children are being pushed aside and they're not, named Princes of Dragonstone, right? So George can write a line for that in Fire and Blood, and we, as the reader, can get that and fill in the blanks in our head. This is a visual medium, so we need to see scenes that show active hatred or seeds of hatred in between the queen and the princess's respective parties. So this scene is very much one of those. It looks peaceful from these pictures, but it's actually, Alicent is said to be, from my sources, is said to be extremely fearful during this, and Rhaenyra is kind of getting off on that. And then these next images that I have, I don't really know what's going on, right? So we have Daemon laying down on the shore with Dark Sister near him. It's obviously not stabbed in him. That's just the way that the camera is set up. But if you look, it's a close-up of him, and he's kind of distraught, right? So we've got other images of him slashing at the sand. He walks out to the beach and falls to his knees and just sort of collapses from despair. The only thing that I could think of around this time that happens, right, is Daemon has a paramour named Mysaria, who to her enemies is known as Misery the White Worm, but she becomes his concubine and actually the mistress of Whispers when he spends time in King's Landing. And yes, this looks like the Stepstones, that's because it's the beach, but also King's Landing is, on the damn ocean. So if that's the case, right, so Daemon and Mysaria end up having a child, and obviously, King Viserys finds out about this. Even though Daemon's technically not in line for the Iron Throne at this time, it looks bad, right? Daemon can't have bastard children. So, King Viserys makes Daemon send Mysaria away. And when he does this, Mysaria loses their child while at sea because a storm hits the ship. So, if that's the case, Daemon's firstborn child dies at sea, while Mysaria, his concubine, is forced to leave him. Obviously, he's in love with her. This would be, in my opinion, a legitimate reason as why he's so distraught. Obviously, it could be at the news of Viserys' death. It could be at the news of Aegon II being crowned, but ultimately, that's going to happen at a different time. And I can't really tell because of how fuzzy these images are from the length of Daemon's hair, if this is earlier on in the timeline, when that would make sense. Because Mysaria losing her baby happens before Daemon marries Lena or Rhea Royce or any of that. Now, these next couple images are just like a flyby. Sorry for the format of this video. I would have put more video footage, but I used all the dragon clips that we have so much. I just wanted to do something different for this video. But these next couple of images are just like a floss of how stylish Daemon looks. These are somewhat high resolution images, and these are obviously around the same time, or at least taken around the same time that he took those pictures with Rhaenyra. I don't think they're related to the death of his child with Mysaria. It could be, but this is a really good shot of Dark Sister. He's basically showing it all for the camera, right? So one of the things that Ryan Condal specifically has mentioned in his early interviews is that the armory department, excuse me, I'll edit that out. The armory department in House of the Dragon, it's not the same weapons master, Tommy Doon, from Game of Thrones. I actually walked past him at Con of Thrones one time, smoking a cigarette. But it's someone else. I can't remember his name, but he was on Ryan Condal and David Mandel's podcast, the Props Podcast, right? So what the stuff dreams are made of, right? He interviewed the armorer for House of the Dragon, and the armorer himself mentioned how Ryan was in his workshop every single day helping him or trying to figure out how the design is going to look, and he was involved in every step of the process. So that is extremely exciting. Remember, some of these swords, or most of the images of Dark Sister, and then the one that we got from Blackfire aren't the highest resolution, right? The trailer was released in 1080p, but the show is going to be released in The trailers always look worse than the actual footage from the show because YouTube's algorithm breaks them down, and when they're broken down, the bitrate makes them look more choppy. So do not worry, is what I'm trying to say. The sword and the costume and the wigs and all that shit are going to be awesome. As a matter of fact, Matt Smith just did an interview recently where he talked about how he was friends with Emilia Clarke and how she said one of the most annoying things about the show is how she has to sit down every day before filming and put on this wig, and it takes a really long time to do it. Matt Smith was like, yeah, okay, whatever. And then he experiences that every day, 2.5 hours before filming. He's got to put that fucking wig on. So, my opinion, the shots that we've seen, people complaining about the wigs, don't worry, they're going to look way better on screen. And then this image is him, he's kind of cocking his neck to the side. This looks as though, I don't know if you can hear that, but I just did the same thing. I don't think that picked that up. But this appears to be footage where, he's definitely on his way to go and meet with Rhaenyra on the beach. Maybe this is from that earlier shot. It's kind of hard to tell when it's just single images like that. Like I said, these were more so to just floss how badass his costume and weapons look. And then this image right here, this is important. This is Aemond One Eye. This isn't tied with the next image. Basically, Aemond goes and mounts Vhagar. Technically, this scene is supposed to happen at nighttime. If I'm not mistaken, because Aemond sneaks out. So Laena dies. Laena is riding Vhagar, who is a female dragon, and that dragon was used during the conquering of Westeros. So this dragon is huge. It is the biggest dragon at this time. Laena, Daemon's wife, was riding her. And then Laena dies. Then Vhagar is claimed by Aemond, who is on the Queen's Party, the Greens, the enemies of the Blacks, right? So they're at, if I'm not mistaken, they're at Driftmark or maybe High Tide, one of House Valyrian's seats. And during Laena's funeral, Vhagar is stolen by Aemond One Eye. And in this image right here, he is walking up to Vhagar. We can tell because when you combine it with the next one, this long sort of like camera thing is like what's used for kind of on location CGI, and then you see that little stick in the back with the tennis ball up top. That is the tip of Vhagar's head. So that's about 30 feet in length from the top of that tennis ball to the actor who's playing a younger version of Aemond One Eye touches the head. So this is going to be very reminiscent of that scene with Drogon and Jon Snow on the cliff at Dragonstone, where Jon Snow goes up and touches Drogon's head. This is going to be very reminiscent of that. And then these last couple images, this is just a gold cloak. I just wanted to show you guys close up of how badass the gold cloak's armors look, because before Daemon takes over them, they're kind of like a ragtag group of city watchmen. They don't necessarily have uniforms and they don't have the best weapons, but when Daemon takes over them for a few years, when King Viserys gives him a position on the small council, and then he's like, this is boring, I want to do something else, and he takes over the gold cloaks. Daemon gives them their iconic golden cloaks, gives them matching armor, gives them proper weapons, and really reforms them. And during this process, this is when Daemon is known as the Prince of the City. Like, Daemon goes into Flea Bottom, he gets into fights with people, he actually kills people in fights, like, in duels and shit. Like, he's such a badass dude. It's not like, people would kill a prince kind of thing. He's got the Targaryen looks, but also he's still not afraid to get his hands dirty, right? And then the last image that I want to share with you all is this image, and this whole video has been about Daemon, where basically Daemon arrives. This is going to be sort of towards the end of the War for the Stepstones. Basically, Daemon gets a letter, which is kind of, it'll be interesting what the contents are, but more leaked kind of information. Someone sent me some information about the scene through the DMs over on Twitter, and they mentioned that Daemon is handed a letter, and the contents of the letter are basically unknown, but it pisses Daemon off, and he decks the House Targaryen guardsman that hands him the letter. The House Targaryen guardsman apparently says something, and this is kind of confirmed in the clip, like the actual footage that we have of this leaked scene, but then Daemon punches him in the face, and Laenor and Corlys go over to sort of help the soldier. So I wouldn't be surprised if this is maybe one of Laenor's favorites, like his house knights that he does butt stuff with. I wouldn't be surprised if that's why Corlys, or Laenor rather, is the one who goes over to sort of help the dude. And it would also not be surprising if, because he's one of Corlys's favorites, maybe he doesn't say something quite, he's one of Rhaenyra's favorites, maybe this is what gives him the extra balls to say something snarky to Prince Daemon, and then Prince Daemon knocks him out. Well, alright, this video is like the perfect length. If you all enjoyed it, please just do me one massive favor, and that's slap a like on it. The like goal is going to be 420. Thank you for watching. My name is Mark, and this has been Sir Hunt's Reviews. Long night. Zaldrizas pusdari ixos. You waited 20 minutes for this. Daor.